Okay, welcome everyone. Thursday evening, early evening, Parshas Terumah 5785. This week's class is called Nachum Ish Gamzu. What's your rush? That's the name of the class. What's your rush? Nachum Ish Gamzu. Anyone ever heard? Huh?
I remember him.
Oh, I was about to say, does anybody remember good old Nachum?
Yeah.
Nachum Ish Gamzu. You know Nachum Ish Gamzu? Your old buddy? He's not your old buddy? Oh my gosh. Who's Nachum Ish Gamzu? Is a guy, well, not a guy, he was a, oh, right. So we're going to read soon in the Talmud, but Nachum Ish Gamzu was a great sage in the times of the Talmud. His name was Nachum. That was his name. And they called him Nachum Ish Gamzu, which literally translates to Nachum, an Ish, a man of Gamzu. What's Gamzu? Two meanings. You said one already. Do you know the other meaning?
Is it also like a phrase again?
It's the name of a place.
No.
Gamzu. So he would be Nachum Ish Gamzu, the man from Gamzu, wherever Gamzu was, I don't know, somewhere in the land of Israel. So that's one reason he was called Nachum Ish Gamzu. The other reason that he was called Nachum Ish Gamzu was because anything that would happen to him, whether it was good or whether it was not so good, he would say Gamzu Latoiva. Gam also, see, you do know, he is your old buddy. Yeah, see, you do know him. Gamzu, you know a little bit of Hebrew. Gam also, zu, this, latova. Also, this is for the good. That's what he said. Anything that happened, didn't matter if it was a good thing, he would say, this is also for the good. And if it wasn't a good thing, he would say, this is also for the good. And we're going to read today a little bit the passage in the Talmud that some of you already are like, oh, you reckon you know already what it's going to be about. If you don't know what it's about, you'll find out soon. We're going to read that passage in the Talmud. But before we get to that, I want to share with you this book that was already pointed out, this old book that I have here. I got this from my parents. This book is so old. I don't know what year it was published. I should probably look it up right over on the inside. I'll tell you how you know how old this book is.
I thought that was going to go into a joke. This book is so old.
The last time.
Well, that reminds me.
It isn't digital.
Huh?
This book is so old that it isn't
It's
digital.
not even digital. There's actual paper. That, by the way, that reminds me, some guy the other day tried to sell me coffin. It's the last thing I'll need. Anyway, so this book is so old. This one is published, and that's not a joke. 1969.
Not that old.
That's 55 years ago.
It's older than everyone in this room, even me. I know, it's funny. Okay, so what's so old about this book is that it has color pictures, as you can see, beautiful color pictures. This is a picture of the Mishkan. We'll try to get to why it's called the tabernacle. Like, what in the world is that? This is the Mishkan, which was the traveling temple that the Jewish people had while we were traveling in the desert. Anybody ever heard of Shiloh in Israel? Did you go there before? I went there this past summer for the first time. I went to Shiloh, the former site, one of the major sites where the Mishkan actually stood. That's one of the altars. That's the tent of meeting. These are the walls around, etc. So if you notice that it's color printed, but the color is separate than the actual paper.
That's crazy.
And on the next page, you have just black and white, because in these days, I don't think they could print color and black and white together at the same time. So therefore, they printed the color pictures, and they have look at this. They have all sorts of wonderful pictures in here. These are some of the curtains and so forth. This is actually this color is a separate piece of paper than the paper it's on. It was glued on or secured somehow. And that's just kind of neat, and has all sorts of Hebrew text here. So let's take a look. So why is the book called the Tabernacle? Anyone know?
It's like the English name for the I can't remember what exactly like the moving ark.
So it's the English name. So it's
The arm. Is that the tabernacle?
No.
To me?
No. Tabernacle is not actually English.
No. Oh.
Do you remember another name for the Mishkan?
Latin?
Huh?
Latin.
Latin is a good guess, but Ohel Moed, which translates as?
The tent of worship or work?
Well, tent of meeting would probably be.
Well, what
An
language
Ohel.
is tabernacle from?
We're going to get that in a second. I would expect someone of such distinguished schooling lineage as you to know. They don't teach you this in South Africa? Okay.
Latin?
It's not Latin. Das is en français. Maybe because I grew up in Canada, so I learned French. I studied French as a child. So tabernacle is French.
Doesn't sound French.
That's how you say it. You know what I mean?
That was not.
Now it's
You're Canadian?
Get to know me better. Oh my gosh. Please don't hold it against me.
In these times, I'm sorry, we have to hold it against.
I know these days, what's Trudeau? I mean,
Well, not the
seriously.
What do you mean? It's fine. You'll become the 51st state soon, right?
If you become the best state, we will accept you.
And you're not even American.
Well, but by the way, just there's a guy who's gonna hopefully gonna win, Pierre Poivrat, and he's a big time fan of the Jews, and he's good. I hope he's gonna win. I don't get to vote anyway. But in any event,
Why not?
maybe I could.
You're a citizen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can vote.
Unless you're.
By the way, we got all my kids Canadian citizenship because if you are American born, but one of your parents is Canadian born, by the way, not just a Canadian citizen, Canadian born, you can automatically get your children. Your children actually already are Canadian citizens. All you have to do is file papers with the Canadian government, which we did during COVID, and got them Canadian citizenship. Why would we do it? Well, we figured maybe one day they're going to grow up and they're going to want to start a Chabad house. They're going to marry someone from Canada and maybe want to start a Chabad house in Canada. You never know. So now they'll be Canadian. It'll be much easier. Anyway,
There's no Chabad house at all in Canada?
there's many.
Yeah. Oh, they're just gonna.
There's many in America too. Many in France as well. France is one of the countries with one of the highest numbers of Chabad houses anywhere in the world is France. And by the way, in Hebrew, the gematria of the word France, this is completely off topic, but you guys got me started on this. The gematria, you know what gematria is? The numerical equivalent, right? Every letter, an aleph is worth one. A bet is worth two. So if you add up the gematria, the numerical equivalent of the Hebrew word for France, it equals, who wants to guess? Come on, think Chabad. Think Chabad. That's a good guess.
Mashiach.
770.
770.
There it is.
So
Either 613 to 770.
those are all the choices. Okay, so the tabernacle is French, it means a tent. The Mishkan, as Paige mentioned, another way that it's often referred to is the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. Where's our tent picture over here? I lost the tent picture. The tent of meeting. Oh, here we go. That's the color picture folded like this. The tent. This is the tent. The tent of meeting. So in French, they call it the tabernacle. Tabernacle is a tent. There. Now you had your French lesson, your Canadian lesson, your.
What's the significance of 770?
That.
Now we have it.
Okay.
No basis
Let's
for something.
oh, and here's this one. I'll just show you this picture. This is a nice picture. This is a nice one. Here we have again, this is one of the altars. There's the kior where the Kohen would wash their hands and feet before entering into the Ohel Moed for the meeting.
But the nines,
Correct.
like Solomon or something, or no? That's where my head went.
Right. No. The Moed with an aleph.
Oh,
Wait, am I confused right now? Ohel Moed, I'm confused. Okay, let's find my picture over here that I'm looking for. Oh, here we go. This is the picture I'm looking for. Who knows what that is? Oh, that is the Ark. The Ark of the Covenant. That's one of the pictures. Let's find. Oh, here we go. Here's two more pictures I wanted to show you. These ones, for some reason, these ones didn't make it into the color. Here is, you see, it's golden outside, wooden inside made out of acacia wood, and a golden insert as well. So just one inserts into the next. So all you see is the gold, but there actually is wood on the inside. And this one is a little bit small, but that's what it looks like. Right? You have, this is the Ark. These are the kruvim, the cherubs, whatever. Kruvim.
Yeah.
They're facing each other, and that's a lid on top. You could remove the lid, and inside was the luchos, the tablets. How many sets of tablets? Two. Which ones?
The broken ones and the normal ones.
Oh, the first set of luchos tablets that Moses broke when he came down the mountain, as well as the whole set, the second set, the box set, if you will. So, and we have on the side poles, one on each side, so that people could carry. They would stand on the inside and would hold it on their shoulders, stand on the inside of each. So there was room, space between that. One person could stand here, one person could stand here, and they would carry the ark. When would they carry it? Well, remember, we wandered. Yeah, we wandered in the desert for 40 years. Even though the majority of that time we were actually not wandering, But there was enough wandering going on that was in case they needed to carry it. Good so far? Okay. Let's take a look at our source sheets. We have a verse from this week's parsha, source number 1, which says as follows: The tabaois ha'aron yihiu abad. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. You see on the side, what you saw on the side, there's little rings attached to the side, and the poles go in the rings on each side, right? So the poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. Lo yasuru mimenu. They shall not be removed from it. Meaning you're not allowed to pull out, to remove the poles from the rings that attaches them to the ark. Source number 2, Mishnah Torah. It's appropriate. Later tonight, we're going to have here 8 o'clock, a Siyum HaRambam, a completion of the study of the Rambam's Mishnah Torah that Baruch Hashem I was fortunate to do. So we're going to have tonight a Siyum HaRambam later. So let's look a piece from the Rambam's Mishnah Torah. At the beginning of the Mishnah Torah, where he goes through and codifies every single area of Jewish life, he starts off with listing all the mitzvahs. How many mitzvahs? 613. The thing that gets tricky is that there are slightly different opinions about what exactly the 613 mitzvahs are. I mean, everybody agrees that Shabbos is a mitzvah. We're good with that. Everybody agrees you're not allowed to cook a kid in its mother's milk, like we spoke about last week's Parsha class. We're good with that. But there are other mitzvahs that it's not so clear. Some say it is a mitzvah, some say it's not a mitzvah. In any event, says the Rambam, says Maimonides, in the Mishnah Torah, negative mitzvah 86, that there is a mitzvah, one of the 613, shaloi lahoitzi badi ha'aron, not to remove the poles from the ark. Shenemar, as the verse says, lo yasuru mimenu, from this week's parsha, Parshas Terumah. So if a person were to come along and be like, these poles are in my way, I'm going to remove the poles from the ark, that is a sin. That is a violation of one of the 613 commandments. You're not allowed to do it. Now, what's the big deal? Why not? Presumably, the purpose of the poles, what's more than presumably, the purpose of the poles is that to carry it, to put it on your shoulder. So put it on the shoulder, and then you carry it. How many times were we traveling? How often did we actually need to transport the ark? I don't actually know how many times. I didn't count it. But although it says there were 42 journeys in the desert, so I guess 42 times total. But what's the big deal? When it's time, like you don't pack your bags before you book your ticket on the airplane. Once you have your flight coming up, then you pack. Unless you're one of those like last minute people that doesn't really pack, and you just like stuff a pair of socks in the bag and like I'll buy whatever I need when I get there. Not going to a third world country. I once went somewhere for Shabbos and I showed up and the person was like, "Where's your bag?" And I was like, "No, this is it." And all I had it was my talus, I think. Whatever. Anyway, let's take a look.
Yeah.
And the next source is the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch literally means the book of education. We do not know exactly who wrote the Sefer HaChinuch. I think that we're pretty sure it was written in Spain. I'm pretty sure in the 13th century. Although I'm not so good at history. I think it was the 13th century Spain. And the style of the Sefer HaChinuch is written as a father talking to his child. That I'm going to educate you, I'm going to teach you. And he goes through all 613 commandments and gives them what he calls sharashim. He gives them a root. And he gives like meaning behind the mitzvah. And then he also discusses the laws of the mitzvah. So let's take a look in the Sefer HaChinuch discussing this mitzvah, which again is a negative mitzvah. It's a prohibition. Don't remove the poles from the ark. Again, what's the big deal? And if you do remove them, so just put them back in when you need it. Like,
Because it's holy.
Well, interestingly, the Rambam actually elsewhere says something quite similar to that. The Rambam wrote numerous books. One is called, you may have heard of it, More Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed. So in More Nevuchim, in the third part of More Nevuchim, the end of chapter 45, he actually writes something similar to what you just said. He writes that there's something, but it doesn't say what, something about the image, the form of the ark with the poles in it. That you can't deviate from that form. You can't change that form. So it needs the poles in it to retain some type of, something about the shape, the form, the image of the ark with the poles, but he doesn't say what. So it's interesting you mentioned that. Okay, let's take a look at the Sefer HaChinuch. Ready? Source number 3 on page 1 over here. He says as follows: Don't remove the pole. He quotes our verse. Let's explain. I'm on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the 5th line, if you're following the Hebrew. Interestingly, this mitzvah is applicable for all generations. It's practiced throughout the generations. Interesting. What does he mean? Let's see. It does not mean when we say that something is a mitzvah that is practiced through all the generations. That does not mean that the mitzvah will never cease. Because after all, we don't do that mitzvah nowadays in a sense because we don't have the ark. We don't know where it is. So we can't walk by it and be like, I'm not going to remove the poles. We can't do it. By the way, how do you fulfill the mitzvah not removing it? Just to do anything? Just to like walk by it and be like, I want to remove this pole. I'm not going to do it. Just to do that or just do nothing? Like, are you automatically doing the mitzvah right now? I'm right now doing the mitzvah. Which mitzvah are you doing? I'm not removing the poles from the ark. Okay, think about it. Anyway, rather,
We like
what?
the 6 like constant mitzvahs, we should have like 7.
Well, there's a
Okay.
few constant mitzvahs, like don't murder. Hopefully.
Right, so how do you fulfill the mitzvah don't murder?
Looks like.
Do you have to go over to someone like with a big butcher knife and be like, when they're sleeping, and be like, you're good, okay, I'm not gonna kill you. You have to do that? How do you? Weird. What is up, Jessica? It's weird, no? How do you do it?
No,
Okay.
there's some people who like,
That's
you
why
know,
this-
think that they're killing.
Are you kidding?
I'm scared.
But you're psychopaths right now.
I'm gonna sleep with a knife in
I
my.
mean, look, that's why it's Jews run all the insurance companies and the law firms.
Okay, so what does it mean when we say that the mitzvah of not removing the poles is noiheges l'doros? It's for all generations applicable. What does it mean? So it says the chinuch Elokeinu ha'inyan as follows: Kol mitzvah shalin tzavinu alel asoyser rak b'zman yadu v'lo yoser. Any mitzvah that was only commanded to do at a specific time and not later. For example, it says there's a commandment, so to speak, in the Torah. Right before the giving of the Torah, that God tells the Jewish people, prepare yourself for 3 days. That's a one-time deal. I don't have to prepare myself for 3 days today. For what? For the giving of the Torah? No, that happened like 3,000 some years ago. I don't have to do that ever again. It was a one-time, prepare yourself for 3 days for the giving of the Torah. That's a one-time deal. You don't do it again. Likewise, that there's another commandment connected to Mount Sinai that they weren't allowed to let their animals graze at the foot of the mountain. So there, when you see the commandment was specifically for that time only. Okay. Any mitzvah that is not commanded to us for a specific time point, but it's just said in general, don't remove the poles. That's not prepare for the giving of the Torah and don't touch the mountain or whatever it is. No, it's just a general commandment. Even though even though that at some point this mitzvah will temporarily cease because we are in exile. I know we spoke about this last night. We're in Golus, we're in exile. Exile meaning we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't have a temple, and therefore we don't have an ark, the Ark of the Covenant. We don't have the table of the showbread. We don't have the menorah. We don't have all the utensils of the temple, so we are missing something in our Jewish life. Or whatever reason, whatever other reason, that there's a temporary point in time when we don't have an ark, so we're not seemingly fulfilling the mitzvah. There's no ark to fulfill it with. For example, nowadays, that nowadays, due to our sins, we don't have the ark. That is called that's called a mitzvah that exists in all times. Even if there may be a point in time when we cannot do the mitzvah for some side reason, that doesn't mean that it's not a mitzvah that exists in all times. So too, our mitzvah that we're discussing today of not removing the poles is an eternal mitzvah that applies in all times, even though technically now it doesn't technically apply right now. Yeah, Justin.
I was gonna ask, like, these poles that you're not allowed to remove, this was just. That was only a thing while in the desert, right? Like
Correct.
once they got to Israel, these poles
Oh,
were
no.
they still there?
Good question. Yes, still there.
Why? Were you
Why?
carrying it
You know
around?
why? Source number one, because the Bible says so. The Torah says, don't remove the poles. We're trying to figure out why not. We're trying to figure out what's the big deal.
Yeah, because you're not gonna carry it, then it's like.
Exactly. So nevertheless, even though we don't have an ark today, we are still commanded. We are still commanded. Don't remove the poles, even today. So he gives a reason. What may be the reason not to remove the poles? Could be that something will arise. We're sitting in the desert, or maybe even in the temple in Jerusalem. I don't know. We're sitting there. And we have the ark, and something arises, an emergency. Something comes up. Maybe there's a battle, there's a war, we're attacked. Something happens, and we'll need to quickly flee and bring the ark with us. So we don't want to have any hesitation at all. So we leave the poles in the ark. That way, in God forbid the case of an emergency, we'll be ready to travel with the ark to protect it. It's a pretty important thing to protect. So that's the Sefer HaChinuch. This mitzvah applies in all times, and the basic reason for the mitzvah is shofar. Now let's get back to our dear friend Nachum ish Gamzu. The Gemara in Masechta Tainus, page 21a. Omru alav al Nachum ish Gamzu. They said, who's they? I don't know. They said, people said, everybody said. I guess it was well known. They said about Nachum ish Gamzu. Shahaya summa mishtein. This is, get ready. It's not so pleasant. He was summa mishtein. Was blind in both eyes. Gida mishtei yodav. Both his arms were amputated. Both his legs were amputated. So he had no arms, no feet or legs. His entire body was covered in boil. It's getting worse and worse.
Who?
Nachum ish Gamzu. Nachum, the man.
This guy,
the happy guy.
and he's gonna be like, it's all for the good.
He had a miserable life. Listen to this. No arms, no feet, body, it's terrible. The thing covered in boils. Not only that, he was in a house that was like about to collapse, basically. The walls were like caving in. The whole house was dilapidated and going to collapse. The story is getting stranger and stranger. And the feet of his bed were not on the ground, but they were the foot of the bed, each feet, 4 feet, was placed in a bucket of water. Why? In order that ants should not be able to climb up the bedpost.
I just
And
heard a
bite
math
it.
problem about that.
A math problem?
Ants crawling up the legs of
What does
the
that
bed.
mean?
It was that ants can crawl up the bed, and they can crawl up the walls, and they can fall onto the bed. So what arrangement should you put the room so that the ants don't fall into the
What
bed?
class is
It was just in one that it was on my feed.
it?
Absolute nerd here.
Okay, I don't know. That's the question on the Gemara over here then. Well, so they say that his bed, the feet of the bed were resting in buckets of water, so otherwise the ants would crawl up the feet of his bed and come over and little bite him, nibble on him. So they would have the buckets of water. That way, if the ants would try to climb up, they would just fall into the water and drown, so they wouldn't bother him. That's how helpless, really, he was. No hands, no feet, covered in boils, can't do anything to protect himself. They had to put the feet of the bed in water so the ants couldn't bite him. This is a real nebuch, as they say. Pamachas, one time, it seems that he was in his house, in his rickety and dilapidated house that looked like it was about to collapse. You know, you ever go to Mea She'arim, that neighborhood in Jerusalem? You ever go to Mea She'arim? You know, they say holds up the walls over there. There's all the posters that they put. You know what I'm talking about? They put announcements. That's because they don't use internet, things like that. How do they get news? And the posters that they put on the walls, that's how you know what's going on. They put funeral announcements and now there's other whatever. Anyway. So big shot of Lifnois Mitose. So one time his students wanted to take his bed with him on it out of the house. And then afterwards remove his other possessions from the house. I guess they thought the house was going to collapse. Omer lahem. So he says to them as follows: Bonai, my children, ponos hakelim. No, don't remove me first. Remove my other possessions first. Then ponos mitos. Then remove my bed with me on it. What's the difference? Which order you remove them in? So he explains. Shemuftach lechem kol zman shani babayis. You are assured, as long as I am in the house, ein habayis neufel. The house won't collapse. So what happened? They listened. Pinu was sakelim. They removed all his possessions and utensils from the house. Then they took him out in his bed, and the whole house collapsed. Rebbe. They said to him, Rebbe, our dear teacher, our dear Rebbe. You apparently, they said to them, you must be a great tzaddik, a great righteous man. Look, the whole house was only standing because you were here. You must be a very righteous man. But if you're so righteous, then how did you end up in the horrible state? No hands, no feet, covered in boils. How did you end up in such a nebach, sad and sorry state? So he says, Omar lahem, bonai, children, my children, ani garamti la'atz. I caused it to myself. It's my fault that I ended up like this. By the way, we're going to get back to the ark. We are going to, I promise, Billy never. What happens? Shapam achas. One time he tells them, I'll tell you a story. Now we have a story within a story. Pam achas hayisi mahalich baderech lebeis chami. One time I was traveling and I was going to my father-in-law's home. V'haya imi mashve gimel chamorim. I had with me a load of different items and possessions, food and so forth, that was distributed among 3 donkeys. One donkey, echad shel Michael. One donkey was carrying food that I had with me. Echad shel Mishte. Another donkey had water, drinks. Ve'echad shel Mini Megadim. Another donkey was carrying other types of delicacies and other things. Ba oni echad. There was a poor man who approached me as I was traveling on the way. Ve'omad li baderech. And he stood in front of me on the way, on the path. Ve'omar li, and he said, Rebbe, said, Rabbi, parnaseini. No, can you give me some money? Can you give me some tzedakah? I'm poor. I need your financial help. This is what this man said to Nachum Gamzu. We rewind it, right? Remember, he's telling a story that happened to him. So what does he say? He goes like this. Here is practically Israeli. No, then. What does it mean? Wait a minute. That's what he says. He goes like this. Amarti loy, amtein. Wait, tells him. Ad she'efrig min hachamor. Wait a minute. I'm gonna get off the donkey. I'm gonna unload the donkey. Just give me a minute. Patience. You're not gonna be laughing for much longer, by the way. Because you know what happens next? The guy dropped dead. Listen, I didn't make the story up. I'm just reading you from the Talmud.
The poor guy.
I said to him, if he spoke Yiddish, which he probably did, we said, ein minut. Wait a minute, right? But give me a chance. I gotta take care of my stuff over here. I'm gonna unload the donkey, And then the guy, he was so desperately hungry, starved, that he dropped dead.
Jeez.
Halachti. So what did I do? Is halachti no falti alponav. I fell on his face in terror. Vamarti, and I said, who did he say it to? He said it to Hashem. My eyes, which didn't have compassion on your eyes, I should be blinded. My hands, which didn't have compassion on your hands, should be amputated. And my feet that didn't have compassion on your feet should be cut off as well. And I wasn't calmed. I wasn't able to rest and calm myself down until I said, Kol gufi mole shchin, and my entire body should be covered in boils. I didn't make the story up. I'm sorry. I didn't make it up. Omru loy. That's the story he tells. That's the story. That's the end of the story. That's the story within the story. That's how I ended up in this despicable state, he tells his students.
See, words are powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What do his students say to him? Then what would you say if your Rebbe, your beloved teacher, told you that he did something that led to him being in such a despicable state, a horrible state? What would you say to your Rebbe, your beloved teacher? So Omrloi, they said to him, Oy lanu sherinucha bakach, Oy. We don't know what Oy means. We know too well what Oy means. Oy, Oy, that we have to see you in this state. And he comes back and says, Omar lahem, Oy li im lo ri'isuni bakach. No, Oy, woe is me if you had not seen me like this. Yeah.
Why did he have to like punish himself and not Hashem punishing him?
That's a wonderful question. What do you think?
Because he didn't have compassion, so he's like, let me do this to myself.
Obviously, it was so, I shouldn't say obviously. It seems to me he was so utterly broken. What did he even do? All he, just wait, I'll be right with you. Just wait a minute. I'll help you. Just hold on.
That's the problem.
That's the
He
problem.
didn't do anything. He was passive.
He was going
no,
to.
he
and
was
then
like,
the guy
wait,
died.
I'll help you, but just I have something else to do first. And the problem was he didn't do anything. I feel like he's
Yeah.
No, but like that's
It's a profound story.
Even like answer though, just like give me a second. You know what I mean?
It could be also, by the way, that as Paige mentioned, he didn't actually do anything, so why would he be punished? He just didn't do something. So maybe that's why he had to bring it upon himself. He felt that he needed atonement, that he obviously had a gross oversight of what this man needed so desperately.
Wow.
Now, why am I telling you this story? First of all, it's a good story to know. The story of Nachum ish Gamzu. Anybody know where he's buried?
In his own.
Yes. Can you be more specific? It's a hard one. It's a hard one, by the way.
What does it say?
Bavarian?
Tveria is a very good guess.
What does
Because
it
that's
say?
like the go-to where a lot, like where Rambam is buried in Tveria. But no, but it's near Tveria.
Spat.
Sfas.
Okay.
Yes, buried in Sfas. Okay. Let's take a look now. We're going to shift gears completely, not completely, to the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law in Hilchot Tzedakah, the laws of Tzedakah, the laws of charity. Let's take a look. We're on source number 6. This is the Shulchan Aruch, Yoredeya, the section called Yoredeya, and is the mitzvah of tzedakah. The halachas, the laws of giving tzedakah. It says as follows: Mitzvah aseh litin tzedakah kafi asagas yad. It is a positive commandment from the Torah. Remember the 613 commandments. Today we've covered 2 of them. One of the 613 commandments is
Don't remove their poles.
don't remove the poles from the ark. Another of the 613 commandments is give tzedakah. Okay, give charity. How much should you give? Kafi hasogas yad. Whatever you're able to. Give what you're able to. There's more details, by the way. Really, the rabbi said you should give a minimum of 10% of your income. That's minimum. Minimum 10% of income. Okay. That's a discussion for another time. We are commanded numerous times in the Torah about this important mitzvah of tzedakah. And there's also a negative side to it as well, meaning there's a negative mitzvah that corresponds to the positive mitzvahs you should give tzedakah. There's also a prohibition, a negative mitzvah associated with it, which is b'maylim of mimena, which is if a person, I didn't see that guy who needs money. If you pretend like you don't see and hide your eyes from it, that is also a transgression of one of the 613 commandments. Don't hide your eyes, basically. Don't close up your hand. Person needs tzedakah, they need financial help, give them something. That's a harsh term. Anyone who hides from giving tzedakah and pretends, I didn't notice that guy, I didn't see it, is called a bliya'al. I don't know how to translate bliya'al, but it ain't good.
a yoke of heaven.
Yeah. It's really, it's even, yeah, okay. It's considered then as if the person is worshipped idols. If you hide and pretend that you don't see the person in need who needs tzedakah, you're considered as if you worshipped idols, which we know is one of the gravest sins. But we have to be so careful in regard to giving tzedakah. Why? Because it might be a scenario that if you don't give charity, you know what might happen as a result? Someone will die. Where did we hear that before?
That's
The poor person who's asking, please help me. He might die if you don't give him when. Miyad, immediately. Look at the next words, last 5 words in this halacha. Ke'uvda de Nachum ish Gamzu, like the story of Nachum ish Gamzu. Wow, that's a halacha. But I have a question for you. What place does a story have in a halacha? Halacha is about law. Halacha is legalities. Why is it telling me like the story of Nachum ish Gamzu? And if there wasn't the Nachum ish Gamzu, the Jewish code of Jewish law could still tell me you have to be so careful to give tzedakah. Let's take a look in an excerpt here from a talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. There's a halachic ruling with regarding to giving actual financial charity. There's other ways to give charity, by the way. You can give charity, you can give tzedakah with your time. I remember when I was in yeshiva, my rabbi once said that, even if you're a yeshiva student, you don't have a job, you don't have any money, you still have to give tzedakah. You don't have money, give up your time. Give up your time to help another person. Anyway, as it says, we saw there, the code of Jewish law says you have to be very careful to offer charity, to offer tzedakah quickly, immediately when someone asks, like the case of Nachum ish Gamzu. You don't want it to lead, God forbid, to someone dying. Now the Rebbe points out, befrat al pi hamavur b'mokum acher, the havos uvda b'shulchan aruch the Maran, shu sefer psak din bilvad, omer darsheni. The very fact that Rabbi Yosef Karo, who also lived in Tzfat, that he wrote the code of Jewish law, and that he incorporated the mention of a story which is completely out of character for the Shulchan Aruch, completely out of character, totally unusual. It's begging us to pay attention to it and give some type of depth and meaning and try to understand why is he telling me like the story of Nachum ish Gamzu. Because again, it's totally out of character. It's like the wrong genre. It's not a storybook. It's a book of Jewish law. Yet, Rabbi Yosef Karo sticks in a story to emphasize, to drive home that it really may actually lead to someone losing their life, God forbid. How careful we have to be when someone asks us for charity, asks us for tzedakah, how careful we have to be to not tell them to wait. Now, what does this have to do with the polls? I said we'd get back to the polls.
I can just raise this.
Use English, please.
Well, it means alacrity. I just like to do things quickly and like not.
What I found whenever I say Jesus and I say it means alacrity, people are like, okay, can you translate that too?
Yeah. The first time someone said haughty to me, I was like, what's that? And they're like, I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
So
Just like not waiting for like putting yourself in the position so that you can do mitzvah as quickly as possible.
as quickly as possible, right? Now let's think about the ark. What was inside? Remember, we already mentioned what was inside the ark. Tablets, the Torah's inside. Each of us is also an ark. We are all an ark, and we have within us Torah. Whatever Torah we learn, and even the Torah we didn't learn. Our sages tell us that when we are in utero, an angel comes and teaches us in utero the entire Torah. That's the whole thing, right? That makes you forget it. That's the mark over here. That the angel does that. That's why sometimes when you learn Torah, you're like, oh, right. It's so familiar. Like it's like sleeping in your bed. Like, like when you're traveling for a while, you come back home, get in your bed under your covers and your pillow, and you're like, oh yeah, this is my bed. That's like the Torah. The Torah, when you learn Torah so many times, it's like, I never learned this before, but yeah, like This is my bed. Like I know what this is. I'm familiar with this. It just fits me. So we all are, in a sense, our own ark. We are an Aron Kodesh, a holy ark. Every Jew is, and every Jew has within us Torah, has holiness, the Luchos, the Ten Commandments, and we have to be ready at any moment to pick ourselves up, to pick our ark up, and travel wherever we need to go to help another person. Not to wait, not to hesitate, even though, as was mentioned, it's totally normal to hesitate. Who doesn't hesitate? Who doesn't say, I'm busy or whatever? Or again, I'll help you just soon. I'm in the middle of something right now. But Nachum Ish Gamzu drives home the point, teaches us that there's more demanded from us because we can, because we're capable of doing that. We are capable of being available to help other people, to put ourselves aside just a little bit to put ourselves aside, to be ready to help someone else. And that's the ark. That's one of the spiritual messages of the ark. Just like maybe in times of war, maybe they would need to travel with the ark in a flash. Good. But maybe I also need to be ready to travel in a flash, to lift myself up, to take my ark, to take my Torah, to take my Judaism, take my Jewish pride and my mitzvahs and everything else that I have within inside me, and be ready to bring it wherever I need to bring it to help another person. And that's why, on a deeper spiritual level, the mitzvah to not remove the poles applies today in 5785, also known as 2025 in Queens. The mitzvah still applies today. I cannot remove the poles from my personal ark. It's a mindset. It's a headspace. It's an awareness and a consciousness of other people. Who needs help? Like Nachum. What did Nachum Ish Gamzu do wrong? Nothing. He didn't do anything wrong. He said, just give me a minute. Okay, Nachum Ish Gamzu was a righteous man. He was a tzaddik. He's held to a higher standard, fine. But we can still learn from it. And the Code of Jewish Law incorporates it to teach us there's something to learn from his conduct. There's ways that we can improve ourselves. We can ask ourselves, where's my hesitation? When someone says, can you do me a favor? What the person's typical answer is, depends what. That's usually the answer, right? I don't know. Like, what are you going to hit me up for? How much money do you want? You know? But maybe we could shift the answer. Maybe when someone says, can you do me a favor? Maybe we could say, sure, I would love to help you. Let me know what it is and let's see if I can help. But like maybe the first reaction should not be, what do you need? Sorry, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Maybe our first reaction, hey, can you do me a favor? First reaction should maybe be, of course I can do you a favor. Of course I can help. Like, let me know what it is. Let's see if I can actually, but I'm ready to help you. I want to help you. I'll even go out of my way to help you. Now let me know what it is. Let's see if we can make it happen. Yeah.
What if you want to help but you can't? Like, do you still get the mitzvah?
I don't know what it means to get a mitzvah. I don't know what it means. But I think that if a person has good intentions, our sages actually tell us that machshava toiva hakadosh baruch hu mitzaref l'maisa, which means that a good thought, a good intention, Hashem is mitzaref l'maisa. He connects it, deed, as if you actually did it. Sometimes things are out of our control. So that's a suggestion from this week's parsha, perhaps a perspective that we can incorporate and a way of looking at things. Any comments or questions? Okay, we will wrap up, and I think we still have officially another class next week. It's 4 out of 5, I think you're supposed to do. You can come to 5 out of 5 if you want, or 4 out of 5. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a great Shabbat. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh Adar, first of the month of Adar, which is the month of Purim. So it's a time to increase our happiness. We don't have to actually wait for Purim. We can be marbim b'simcha. We can increase our joy even today and tomorrow and the day after. And there's 3 Torah scrolls in Shul on Shabbos, which is a very rare occasion. And that's all for now.